What's going on, everybody? It's Willoughbys, and welcome back to the Lore Chronicles. In today's video, we are going to have a tier list ranking the viability of every single ink combination possible. But before we get to that, we have a little bit of a game design discussion for the first 10 minutes, where basically there are players out there who believe that from a game design standpoint, every single ink color should be equal in terms of its amount of powerful cards, and the different things that it can do should be just the same as maybe another color. However, there are also people like Dick who totally disagree and think that that is not a good strategy for the game designers to take, and he breaks down why he thinks that. But if you want to skip the discussion, you can always go to the timestamps in the description, get you right to the tier list. Otherwise, enjoy the video. We'll see you in the next one. All right, so we're gonna do a tier list of viable ink combinations for every single ink combination that exists. But before we do that, go ahead, get on your soapbox, say your piece.
All right, I'm on my soapbox. So, we had to make this tier list video because you wanted to be, I didn't want to necessarily be so nice. So I've been listening to a lot of other stuff and like reading posts and everything, and people just keep saying, why can't all the ink combinations be viable? Like, I would love to play in a world of Disney Lorcana where all ink combinations are viable. That's all I keep hearing. And I don't get it. I don't understand if they don't understand game design. I don't comprehend anything that's happening right now, because I think that would be a terrible thing for any trading card game. And I think that that is actually what leads to what people hate, which is power creep. Okay, so Will, do you know what power creep is?
I do know what power creep is, but we should reiterate it for the people.
Okay, so power creep is basically where cards need to be more interesting over time. That's just a fact, right? And there's a couple of ways of doing that, and one way of doing that is called power creep, and that is where you take a card that is just so much better than another card. It's funny, I just happen to have this next to me. Hopefully it comes up on camera.
Yes.
See how the ads are right, see, okay? Remember when one jump ahead was good? That's a great example of power creep. It costs the same, it's inkable, and it draws you a card.
Yep.
You don't even have to ink a card with it. You can just play it and draw a card. Whereas the other one, when you drew it late game, it's just like, oh, womp womp. Yeah, so what I prefer instead of power creep is for the designers of games to basically choose which ink combinations, in the case of our game, are going to be powerful at different times. Okay, if you combine that with rotation, it's possible where you have maybe a full year or two where 5 to 7 to 10 ink combinations are viable, and then a year or two where different ink combinations are viable, and they just keep circling around, right? And then you can keep the cards at a very similar power level, or at least comparable in some ways, instead of just constantly going, well, this is better, and this is better, and this is better, and this is. So, yeah. The other thing that this made me think was, like, I've never played a game where so many different decks are viable. So then you were like, hey, well, let's make a tier list about which decks are viable.
Right.
And here we are.
Well, I have a question about what you said. So hopefully also maybe I'm reflecting some questions that others might have, maybe in the comments. So are you saying, for example, from a game design standpoint, right? Naturally, Lorcana, really any TCG, but like Lorcana has to keep getting better and better and more interesting, right? And that's going to be harder because you want people to keep buying your game and playing your game, right? These companies have to make money. However, that gets harder the more cards there are, right? And the longer the game goes on, because the card pool gets bigger. Already certain things exist, right? So that's where something like a power creep might come in, because it's like, well, we already have, a ramp card that's low cost, whatever you want to say. Let's make it a little better so that way people have a reason to buy this new set, so they can still get their ramp card. That's what we saw the sale the Azurite Sea, right? But what you're saying is, instead of a power creep, something like, instead of just taking one ink combination and constantly, or every ink combination at the same time and constantly making them all better all at once, right? So each set they all get better. You're suggesting Lorcana do something like, well, right now we're going to focus on Amethyst for, let's say, Reign of Jafar. Amethyst is going to get a buff and power level, and everybody will want to play Amethyst cards. Then next set, let's say Fabled set 9, just pretend reprints don't exist. Let's say this is going to be the set where like Emerald gets a buff. And you think that's a better way of going about keeping the card pool interesting, is kind of like letting each ink combination have its limelight, but at different times.
Yes. I think that that is the more difficult way when it comes to designing cards.
Yeah.
And because it's a lot easier just to be like, oh, we'll just make the cards a little better.
Right.
I think this is a really good way of thinking about it. Think about every ink combination has a volume dial. And at different times of the year, by printing new sets and taking away different sets and so on and so forth, the designers can constantly turn the dial just a little bit in whatever direction. I think that's probably the best way for people to visualize it.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to do. And as you can see from like Magic the Gathering, for instance, Yu-Gi-Oh, all kinds of different games. If you just like threw someone in a time machine from 15 years ago who played one of those games and told them to just sit down and play it now, they probably wouldn't even know how. But it's still the same game, technically. Like, it's the same name, right? But like, just constantly getting more and more, I would say, difficult to understand.
Yeah.
So.
I do think that's a strong suggestion, because I think it keeps... I think it also keeps the game more interesting for players because they're constantly having to learn new strategies. Let's say we just talked about this with should you switch, your deck or not. It's kind of like the idea of like you can keep switching different ink combinations or like your main deck, which is also going to be more fun for you as a player because there's more to learn. I do think so far it seems like that's the approach Lorcana has taken. We have seen some power creeps for sure. I think specifically in Ruby Sapphire, those really saw some power creeps. But like I think overall they've done a pretty good job of like sharing the limelight between ink combinations. And I also think what's great about Lorcana is usually for like from all the metas that we've seen so far, most of the time I think it's fair to say that the metas are pretty diverse. They usually got the rock paper scissors thing going on. Rogue decks usually thrive a little bit depending on the situation. And anytime we've seen something where only one thing is dominating, they quickly step in and make those bans and changes. So I do think so far Lorcana's done a great job, but I do think it's important to point out like there is a method to the madness and there's never going to be a world in which everything is good all of the time.
Right. Like the only game I can really think of where like one color is just as good as the other is chess.
Yeah.
Yeah, black, you got white. They're basically just as good as the other, right?
Yeah.
Except one always goes first. Yeah, so I do want to say one, like we're not complaining about the design of the. I'm complaining about people complaining because I think it's a stupid complaint. I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah.
Two, I think that anyone who really likes design and history cards should actually check out the Receivables podcast. I watch them. Well, I listen to them when I'm at the gym. And I'm not learning that much that I didn't already know, but it's a nice walk down memory lane about the history of Magic the Gathering. And it's so funny when they talk about cycles of cards and they're just like, yeah, I mean, designers need to know that not everything has to be equal. And like, you don't need to put a cycle across every single, color combination. And that's all I think about when I'm playing Disney Lorcana. Like, it's fine if things are unbalanced as long as they constantly are changing with the tides of the game,
right? Like constantly changing which is imbalanced and how imbalanced, right? Like they're never crossing that threshold of like Bucky broken, because when they do, they fix it. Yeah, so I think that's a good point. And I think for anybody who might be confused as to why all ink pairings aren't made equal, they technically are, just at different times. So cool, a little bit of TCG sage wisdom for you. I think you're absolutely right, and I think that is a good note for the people. We've got about 10 minutes left in this video. Let's do our ink combo tier list.
Yeah, like I can't believe how many people don't seem to realize that there is an insane amount of could play. So you tell me I can't see your screen, so you tell me what ink combo
Is up
it
first.
is, and then we can go over it.
Well, first, let's quickly go through the tier options. We've got S tier. These are going to be broken combinations, like combinations that are unfair to play, right? A tier, these are going to be like obvious choices, things that are staples, things you're going to see all the time. B tier, we're going to call it situationally good. They can do well and usually do, but there's some times that they have more maybe bad matchups than good matchups on occasion. C is going to be heavily meta dependent. Maybe in the right time or place it can shine, but otherwise it's going to be a little questionable. And then we've got decks that you can bring to locals. Those are your fun decks. Some people call them, I think, pet decks. Just things that, you keep in your back pocket when you want to have a good time. I think you had in set 1, you had a broom pet deck or something, where maybe it wasn't set 1.
Yeah, it was like set 2 and 3. I love brooms.
Yeah, or you could I name Magic Broom, and then you would keep getting brooms off the top of the deck. I remember that at locals. That was fun.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to clarify on these tiers before we get into it?
Yeah, so A is Bucky, obviously.
Yeah.
A is the Hiram decks from last set. And then C is going to be like Alex's Amethyst, Amber, Hyper Aggro deck that it literally needed to play against Sapphire every single round, or it might as well concede the game.
Cool.
Like, it still can win a tournament. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. So let's do it. So first up, we have Sapphire Steel. Specifically, we're going to do the non-Kiwi version. Kiwi version is going to be represented by something here called Big Ben. It's just, I stole it from an old Specie tier list, the picture. But so
Okay.
Let's do Sapphire Steel first.
Yeah, so I would say Sapphire Steel right now is a C, the Sapphire Steel control.
Yeah.
I still think that you can build it to beat certain decks, but you can't build it to beat every deck right now. Which is great because I feel like it's been around the A tier most of the game.
Yeah, for a while it was, or like even if it would take a while to get there, usually by the end of a metagame, people would like kind of solve Sapphire Steel and it would shoot back up to that A tier. I agree. I think it right now is not too hot, but I'm sure there's one somewhere that can win something. So then with that,
I wouldn't be shocked to again anything between S and C. I would not be shocked
to see
if it
it like
did win a tournament.
Yeah.
It just ran into what it needed to run into.
yeah, in the
But-
right hand, sort of.
Yeah.
With that, Kiwi, what do you think of Kiwi?
I think Kiwi Birds is great. I think it's a B tier deck. I don't think it beats everything in the game, but I think it's a deck that can just win because it's an aggro deck, and it has more legs than some of the hyper aggro decks because it does have interaction with like strength and fire the cannons and stuff like that.
I agree. I think Kiwi's a solid B right now. I don't think it's like everybody's gonna pick it. That's why it's not the obvious choice, but I do think it has legs. All right, this one's kind of hard because it has gotten better recently. Emerald Sapphire. This set maybe isn't as good, but like it was viable for a minute there. I think it depends on how you build it, who pilots it. So what are you feeling with this?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with C again. I still think it's above fun level. I think the problem is it actually had a really good matchup into the Sapphire decks, and then Hiram was banned.
Right.
So the Hiram banning had a trickle down effect of also hurting this deck.
Right.
And this deck really struggles against really aggressive decks, and a lot of the aggressive characters are getting higher and higher above curve as we move to rotation. So yeah, I would say it's a C tier.
Yeah, for sure. I'm with that. I think it, like you said, it used to be good or better rather, because I don't think it's like terrible, but I think it's fallen off a little bit. All right, so this one's interesting. Emerald Amethyst is kind of having its time in the sun right now. How are you feeling? Technically, there's a discard version. There's a little bit more of like an aggro version. I just think overall, though, they're probably similar in tier, right? Regardless of how you build them. So where do you want to put Emerald Amethyst?
I would actually say it's A tier.
I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, Brayden just did well at the encounter with it. Artabax has been featuring the deck a lot, as he typically does. But yeah, I think Wrong Lever, Pull the Lever is really good. So
and
Yeah,
fun
I'd
to
say
pull
A tier.
off. Yeah, I agree. I think this is having a heyday right now, which is really cool to see it come back in this way. All right, so we've got two versions of Amber Emerald. First up, we're gonna do Chernadog.
Okay. I would say it's a B tier deck.
Okay.
I think that it doesn't aggro as good as some of the other decks, but it also is just like a very good aggro deck. So like you just win games, especially if your opponent stumbles even a little bit, you just run them over, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think also for me personally, it's B, and it's also I think going to be behind Kiwi for me. Actually, I still think Kiwi's maybe a better choice right now.
I'd rather play Kiwi because it has more interaction.
Yeah.
But
So next up we have Amber Emerald discard. So kind of like Sing Together, Under the Sea, the Prince Johns, maybe Kita, things like that. It has Louis now, or Lewis, which is the Reckless, which is cool to see. But what are you thinking about that?
you might disagree with me. I would put it on a C tier though. I think this
Ooh.
was another deck that was hurt by Hiram being banned. Like I think this took advantage of the slow control decks because you would like just always want to set up the same exact draw engines every single time that involves Prince John. And like if you're getting run down with like 3-drop ladies playing a piglet, it's just a lot harder. It is, still a deck though that like you can Kita Under the Sea, but on the draw, your opponent actually might have so much of an advantage that they can still beat you before you can quest to 20.
I do actually think at this point I am going to agree with you. I would put it at the highest possible C because I do think sometimes it has legs. But we did just see over in SSG Zach Bivens himself pilot this deck. Now he finished top 25, which is still great. There was 150 players there, so top 25 is still great. But when Zach Bivens himself can't pilot it to a top 8, you're not getting a better pilot. So I do think very low B, high C. So we'll leave it at C.
Bennett from the UK has won basically every tournament he's entered. Deck.
Wait, you cut out a little bit.
And
Are you saying Bennett from the UK?
Yeah, that's another great example of a C deck where it's like if you're, or any deck really, it doesn't matter what rank it is if you are just the best at it.
Right.
Right. So that's another thing that I think people need to keep in mind when they want to be black and white with things like tier lists.
Yeah, so this is all flexible and just an opinion, and anything can change. And these C tier decks could win a 100-person tourney tomorrow. Next up, the big bad, at least for right now, Emerald Steel.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say it's an A deck. There's even like 2 viable versions. There's like the new Lilo song version. I can't remember what it's called. It's giving me nightmares. That's why I can't think about it right now.
Yeah.
Beyond the Horizon, right? Yeah, so there's that version, which we saw win SSG, and then there's just the normal version that like Dale would play, and he won 2K.
Yeah.
Right. And then I believe Braden again top forward a tournament with this deck. I think it was same weekend or 2 weekends apart. I can't remember. But yeah, Braden's been putting up numbers recently, and this deck is going nowhere fast until rotation.
Yeah. I think this deck is still strong. It's no longer broken though. I think there's a lot of people that really fear this deck, and some people would probably be surprised to say that we don't think it's broken, but I think the deck is fine. I get that Prince John can be a problem, but I think right now there's a lot of different ways to kind of out it. Next up.
Yeah.
Amethyst Sapphire, Blurple, Samethyst, if you ask Dan. Where are we putting Blurple?
Amethyst. I'm gonna put Blurple right now in B tier.
I agree. I do think it's high B though.
I think that this is another one of those decks that the metagame needs to form a little more. Like there's a lot of different options you have when building this deck. Obviously the Amethyst cards have been incredible forever.
Right.
And sometimes different ones are better than others.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it sucks because I was really high on this deck, this set. I was really trying to make it work, but I think I do need to wait a little bit till it finds exactly which version it's going to play, because there's kind of a lot of different options out there. So until it settles, I don't think Blurple is quite where it needs to be yet. All right, next up, Amethyst Steel. I think traditionally very good deck, but I haven't seen too much of it right now.
I also think that this is another ink combo that basically has two different versions, but they're like just as good as each other.
Right.
I think there's the rabbit slower controlling version, and then I think there's the Doc aggro version. And I would say that it's a B right now. It's just one of those decks that if you told me it won the tournament, I'd be like, yeah, sounds great. If you told me none made top 8, okay, just wasn't its day. Like, it's just one of those middling decks that like has no good or bad matchup.
Yeah, I agree. I think I might favor this over Kiwi right now, but I really think it depends on how you build it.
Yeah,
but
I think it's
good.
also down to like personal play style.
For sure. All right, next up, Ruby Sapphire. Formerly might have been broken, but they did.
Yeah, formerly it was S tier for sure.
They nerfed it. So where are we at?
Yeah, and then again, there's like two different types, right?
That's
This
true.
is another thing. Like, I'm just gonna go back to throwing shade. We have named so many decks, and we're only halfway through. Like, I don't know how much more diverse you want a game to be.
Yeah.
It's driving me insane. So yeah, there's the DKP version, and then there's heavy version. And I would say both of them are either like a B plus or an A, which is a cop out. But let's just say
I'm putting it end of A, because I do think the people who know how to play that well, even like the items version, like, you know what I mean, like the people that are gonna play it are probably the people that are like, they've been on it for a while, they just know it well enough. I think it's and it's still something you have to fear, so I think that's what keeps it an A.
I also think that it's a really good metagame choice for a deck that we have later. So it like has to be a great call just because another deck is so good.
Right. Next up, Emerald Ruby.
Oh, we're finally in the fun category. But I still do think that there's two decks. Like, if my opponent inks Emerald Ruby card turn 1, it's like, are they playing Emerald Ruby discard, or are they playing Emerald Ruby evasives?
Right.
Like, both of them are just fun decks. Like, my friend Tiffany won a set championships with Emerald Ruby evasive. TFM Kylie got 33 points at a DLC evasive. Like, your fun deck can still put up good results, right? And I think Undermine made the deck closer to like good and scary, and we'll see how things shake up after rotation on. But also there's like Queen of Hearts plus the Hercules card, and then you can put Prince Philip in play, which just banishes whatever your opponent put in play, stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of fun decks that you can build with this, but it's still, fun tier for me.
Yeah, I definitely think it settles in fun. I think, like you said, it has a potential to continue growing post rotation and getting better. I think it's getting closer than it's ever been to being meta viable, but I do think ultimately, when, at least for me personally, my playstyle, when decks rely too heavily on combos, so it's like you either see it or you don't as well, I think can also bring them down for me. So I still think you're gonna have a great time playing it, and I think you could probably even do well with it. But in terms of what like is, no, but this isn't like an obvious choice by any means. So I'm gonna put it in fun, but I don't want anybody to be like up in arms about like this fun category. I think it's like you bring it to locals and you crush your locals on occasion. So next up, we've got Ruby Amethyst. Technically, Ruby Amethyst Control versus Ruby Amethyst Evasives are two different decks. I think it's fair to say, even if you're running the evasive version, you are still a control deck. So let's just call it Ruby Amethyst Control.
Yeah.
Where are you putting it?
Still a great example of like the diversity.
Absolutely.
If your opponent inks a card turn 1, you don't necessarily know what they're playing, and I would say that this is an A tier.
Interesting. I think this deck's fallen a little bit out of favor lately. I do think it settles in B. I think sometimes, depending on the way you play it, Blurple can beat it. Sometimes the way you build it, Blurple cannot. So I'll keep it at the bottom of A for you, because I also think it can take some other decks on, but
I'll also say that it's one every format everyone says this deck needs to figure out the.
Yeah.
So I might just, I might just have deja vu here, and I'm just like, yeah, it's A tier, because it's going to be at some point. If we made this video a month from now,
It
it
could be.
probably lands differently.
To be fair, it did play
Which is
second in
fun.
SSG. So
Yeah.
in a sea of emerald steel. So it can do it. So Blurple, or not Blurple, Ruby Amethyst kind of relying on that reputation. I think for me it might actually land high B, but we'll keep it at the end of A. All right, next up, Ruby Steel. I just want to say before you even jump in here, Ruby Steel, in theory, like in terms of like the amount of removal on both sides, would be broken, right? Like this should be an S tier deck, but they were smart enough to design Ruby and Steel with not enough card draw to give this deck the legs it needs.
Yeah. Well, it's all uninkable.
Yeah. So
Like,
card draw and uninkables. So where are you putting this?
You have a whole new world. You can draw all the cards you want. You then can't do anything. Yeah. So it's obviously fun, right? It's levels fun. And then there's, I want to name the decks for every ink combination, just so that people again can get hit over the hammer, fact that hit in the head with the hammer of the fact that you could play so many different decks in the game. So there's the Mushu decks, right? The challenge map decks. And then there is the decks that challenge ready characters. There's a lot of things that challenge ready characters in Ruby Steel. Then you have called, which by the way, Light the Fuse. That card is incredible. It's a shame it's Steel, not just Ruby. I think that card's fantastic. And then Ruby Steel, there's that Shark deck that one of our friends played who top 8'd an SCG, right? Just constantly readying the Shark, using the Shark to challenge a character, ready the Shark again, gaining a lore every single time, right? So even fun decks, again, can top 8 tournaments.
Yep. Next up, we've got Ruby Amber. So usually people think Mufasa here. Worth noting in the 3-deck format and triple deck format where like people can ban decks, a lot of people are putting this in there because it never gets banned. They win their game on the play. And then they play like a more like, I don't know, like something that could go either way for their game on the draw. So this has actually seen it's been doing well in terms of only playing it on the play. But where do you put this?
So I'm going to give this deck a C tier.
Okay.
But if I was playing the 3-deck format, I might give it an A.
Ooh.
Like Christian, friend of TFM, Christian, he either made top 4 or top 8 at the World Class Cards event. And yeah, he said like, oh, I knew when I was on the play and I get to play a Mufasa deck on the play. Everyone has always said, if you won every die roll, the deck's fantastic.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I actually think the deck is also not even like built to its fullest potential right now.
No, I agree.
Like, I don't remember if it's Huey, Dewey, or Louie, but the 2-cost uninkable 2/3 that quests for, I think that card is not seeing nearly enough play right now. And there are so many 4-cost cards that you can play on turn 3, including like the 0/8 Minnie Mouse. Like, how does anyone ever get through that? The biggest problem with Doc, the Amber Doc, was you would quest with it, and you'd get one quick burst, and you'd play like a Mufasa, but then everything banished the Doc, and then hopefully that Mufasa got you of a benefit that you could just throw away the entire turn. Whereas this curves perfectly into things that either it, like you could play turn 1, turn 2 that, turn 3 Rapunzel, draw 3 cards, or draw 2 cards. You could play a huge bodyguard. Even in Amber Steel, you could play Pluto, right? Like, it is also an ally, so you can play Miss Bianca. There's a lot of options with that card. I digress. I actually think this deck is more viable than it's been in a very.
There you have it. More viable than it's been in a long time, but still in the C tier. All right, next up, we've got puppies, Amber,
That's one of the decks.
Sapphire.
I think there's 3 decks in this. All of them are fun tier,
Okay.
unfortunately. But you got the puppies,
Yep.
right? And then you have the like just Amber Sapphire good cards, like the new Ludwig, uh the Restoring the Heart, stuff like that. Just like actually really good cards, but none of them interact well together.
Yeah.
And unfortunately in this game, power level alone isn't good enough. You need things that are more than the sum of its parts. And then you have Princess Aggro, which we have seen like day 2 some DLCs or like do well on certain stages, you know. Playing 2 costs, 1 for Anna into 3 costs Hans, you know, stuff like that. So I think that it's close. I hopefully at some point it's good enough. Like just the Ludwig alone felt like it might have been good enough. So we'll see what the future holds. But right now it's on tier.
Yeah. Warding characters is always great, right? It's got a lot of warded characters in that deck. So sometimes, you know, again, depending on the format, it can really shine, or even just depending on like which tournament and what people registered. But I do think overall, yeah, fun deck for sure. Last one. That's not true. Sorry, there's 2 more. Amber Amethyst. Technically there's a new version popping up that has a little bit more of a top end, but I do think traditionally this is more of an aggro play style. But it does have that like one turn knockout Monstro Donald Duck kind of thing. Where are you putting this deck?
Fun tier. We'll throw the Monstro deck in fun tier. Okay.
Monstro's fun tier.
As much as people wanted to hype it up on Twitter, wasn't happening. But yeah, I think that just the normal, say, hyper aggro, you go ultra megatonic is C tier. And you know, it's a meta choice. Like I had said earlier, Alex, top 16 to SSG in an absolute stacked house. And he was just like, I'm gonna play Sapphire all day and I'm gonna beat him.
Yeah, maybe like end of C, high fun tier sort of deck. I agree. Okay, and finally, Amber Steel going right up to broken. Just kidding. Where do you want to put this deck?
All right, so how many decks are there for one? Diggy Hole, right? Kurt Spice just won a tournament with it. Traditional Amber Steel with a whole new world. Amber Steel with Beyond the Horizon, of a whole. And then there's the Wochuk and Sky version. Like, hey, Vinny's here. We're just gonna get, you know.
Just gain some lore.
Yeah, the Vinny deck I'm gonna put at a B or a C. I've been hating. And like people boast about like their Magneto results time. I had a 80% win rate. I was in the top 50 before they reset, which you know it wasn't the real ladder or not. But the deck just felt awful. Like I like would lose to Amber Steel just constantly.
Yeah.
And then I'd play in the middle of the night, and sometimes I'd play the same person 4 times, and it would be like, you know, Ruby Sapphire, and I'd just have a bye 4 games in a row. It's like this is why my win rate was so high. You know, not on top of if it was a best of 1, I'd be way more inclined to play this.
Yeah.
Because you just catch them off guard before they even know what to mulligan, right? So yeah, I'd still again not be shocked if it won a tournament. If their opponents just stumbled every once in a while, if they just ran into matchups, oh yeah, it could crush a tournament. It would ruin
the
days.
pure aggro Vinny version of the deck.
Yes.
What do you think? What do you think about? I think let's forget Beyond the Horizon version, specifically where like they have You Have Forgotten Me and Beyond the Horizon. I think we could put that away for a second because I don't think it's super popular. I think people are just trying the new cards. Traditional Steel Song, where are you putting that deck?
A tier.
High A.
Deck's insane. If there was no Ruby Sapphire, S tier.
Yeah,
Why
Ruby Sapphire
is such
didn't
a good choice.
exist. S tier for sure.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to talk about before we wrap this up, right? This is our tier list. Biggest thing is there's no S tier. There's no broken decks here. For people who are like, you're crazy. What do you have to say about there being no broken decks on this list?
I'm smarter than you. That's why I make YouTube videos. I'm just kidding. You know, I've told Steve, I told some of the other, I cannot stand you. I want an S tier. I don't want to have to think so much before going to a tournament. Not only that, like I don't know. It's just like sometimes, you know, you play a deck when there's 15, 20 viable decks and you just run into all your bad matchups.
Yep.
And then people are just like, what went wrong? Like, what are you, terrible at the game? Gonna win every single tournament. Okay,
Right.
it's just not gonna happen. We should have mentioned Jafar.
Oh, Jafar
Yeah,
wheel.
yeah, Jafar wheel, B tier.
B
Okay,
tier.
I'll throw that up there real quick. Yeah, and you know these. Unfortunately, the game is designed pretty well, and these tier lists probably change from week to week.
Yep.
And it wasn't necessarily wrong the week before. You know, it's just constantly evolving game. There's thousands and thousands of people playing at all times. So yeah, that's all I got. You got anything else?
Yeah, I mean, this is the tier list. Come for us in the comments. We'd love to know your opinion on the tier list. And the biggest thing is for the people who are saying, you know, why can't every deck be good? Look at this list. Basically, every deck is good. Like, basically every deck is good, depending on how you swing it. But also, there is a reason why there's ebbs and flows. And I think for people to complain about not all inks being the same power level when we have such a crazy diverse meta is just an interesting thing to complain about, because it would be one thing if there's only like one, you know, deck that's really, really good and everything else kind of sucks. But to have such a diverse meta and still want it to be even more equal, it's like, what? All these decks do well. So
I've got one more stupid analogy.
all right.
Okay. It's stupid. And the thing is, it's gonna be physically impossible for everything to be even. Okay.
Yes.
It just will be. Even when things are so close to being even, there will still be some percentage point different because they didn't print the same 60 cards in every single ink combination, just give them a different name. So like let's look at a dollar bill versus 100 pennies. They're even. Do you really want to carry around 100 pennies all day? You know, like, yeah, they're the same, but one's still going to be better. Right. And that's just how all trading card games are. And that's how they will be. The best designers in the world cannot get things perfectly equal. So.
Right. There you have it. All right, folks, that's going to be it from us. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. It genuinely does help the channel out a lot, guys, actually. Also, leave us a comment. That also helps the video out a lot. So even if you're yelling at us, we want you to comment it. And that's going to be all from us. We'll see you guys in the next one.